that first step of helping people succeed is just pushing them out of the nest like the birds do.
Right.
It's empowering people to truly not do stuff. I mean, do stuff. It depends on what you're teaching them, but to make decisions. I think anytime you're raising somebody up, whether it's for diversity or whatever it's for, you have to give people the opportunity to carry the weight and to make the decision. Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I am so glad once again to have you join us as we discuss differing topics to figure out what our potential is and how to best discover it, and along the way to build a sense of community. I do have a book that is on sale on Amazon, and I got to tell you, I've never really so much you learn when you write a book, and one of the things you learn is that Amazon doesn't really care about books. They actually discount the price really quickly, and anyways, it doesn't impact the what do you call it, the money you make from the book, what do you call that, royalties. Anyways, it stays the same, so students and everybody gets that. But I believe in the message of the book more important than anything. Even if it were free, I think it can make a difference. Go to Amazon, pick up 4 or 5 copies while you're at it. It'd be a great Christmas gift this holiday season.
And it would.
There we go. And of course, I got to welcome Carson Luke to the program.
I'm excited to be here. I feel like it's been a little bit.
It's been a little bit since we did one live. Could do it live. I love that show. But anyways, and normally we do it in the afternoon, but today it's morning time. So you guys have to let us know in the chat. Do you think that we are more energetic in the morning, or is Carson dragging in the morning?
Oh, me.
That's
Interesting.
That's the key. Yes, our producer tells me too that the audiobook came out. I don't know why it didn't come out at the same time, but it is out now.
It's hard to get Morgan Freeman's voice.
Yes.
It takes some time.
Yeah. Is that who does it? Yeah.
I believe so.
I think it is Morgan Freeman, or maybe it's The Rock. Anyways, you can pick it up. Hey, if you haven't already, please subscribe, whether you're listening to us in the audio version or there's a video version on YouTube, and hit the thumbs up and subscribe. And even more importantly, you could share it with somebody. Let's get this baby rolling and make a difference in the lives of people. Today, we're going to talk about something everybody has to deal with, whether you're leading a company, a ministry, whether maybe you coach a little league team, or maybe you have a family. Really, no matter what you do in life, everybody is, let me give you the biblical word, discipleship. But it's basically the idea of raising up people. So if you have some hints or you disagree with what we say, that's fine. Everybody has different perspectives. You can let us know in the chat. Give us a little comment.
I got to say, on this one, I am by no means an expert on discipleship. It is what I enjoy the most, though, when it comes to my job.
Is it?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think it's the one that takes the longest. When I think about all the different responsibilities of being in ministry, but I would assume that it would be very similar running a company, leading out in a business, whatever it may be. It takes the longest, but has the most incredible return long term. And not just from a perspective of what the company, business, organization is able to do when this person has been discipled, but from the benefit of how you see their life improve through that discipleship. So, yeah, no, it's definitely my favorite part.
We talked in a previous version of the podcast, we talked to one of the Kendrick brothers who did the movie The Forge. And it was kind of about, discipleship or raising up people. He was partnering with a young man.
Yeah. Fully about, I would say. Like, yeah, that was really all the movie was about.
Yeah. And, for me, as I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, I was thinking about what we needed to talk about. And I think this is one of those things. And it's become, I think, more difficult. Years ago, when I first got started, there was a scene to me. Now, again, this is just one man's perspective. I haven't done a in-depth research study on this, but is that it's easier to raise up people or to develop people, if they want to grow, they want to mature. And, I would do a book study or a class or a seminar or even take people to a conference, and they pay their own way. And it always seemed like it was easier because people had an inner sense of drive. Like they wanted to be better. They wanted to succeed. And it seems like since COVID, where everybody just kind of maybe before, but it seems like with COVID, since everybody kind of took a break, it's like, hey, I can have life without work. I can stay home. I can watch Netflix. It seems like people are more in that mindset, where it's like they aren't as driven to succeed. They want the fruit of success, finances. And, I remember listening to a guy who had just graduated college, and he was frustrated because he didn't have a job that paid well enough for him to get a sports car. I was like, well, you're 23. What are you expecting, Or people who, are upset about student loans and all of that. Again, I understand, the frustration of having to pay those back, but it's like there is a price to success. Yeah. That when it comes to raising up people, I say all that to say when it comes to raising up people that it's kind of difficult because, how do you inspire and motivate people?
Yeah. Well, what I've found, I'm curious if it's the same for you. What I've found is previously, there's someone you want to disciple. There's someone who you just hired or, a new employee, whatever it may be. There's someone that needs discipleship. Before, you could start growing your relationship with them, right? Discipleship has always required a relationship, but you could help grow them at the same time. So as you're building the relationship with them, you're also helping disciple them. What I found to be more often the case now is I have to build a relationship before I can do any sort of growth because of what you said. That drive is not as present. Not that there aren't people with drive. It's just that a lot of people can experience a lot of satisfaction in life because of how far technology and things have advanced. It seems like there's so many luxuries that your everyday average person can experience that's kind of pulled away some of that drive. Mm-hmm. Whereas previously, the only way to experience those luxuries was by being successful. Mm. You know what I mean? But now those luxuries have become more accessible because technology has advanced. And so I think it's taken away that from some people. So I've found that it really has to start with just purely relationship. And once they care about me, then they care about what matters most to me. Mm. Whether that's the church or leadership, my family, whatever it may be, that will carry over to them as well. And that's when I can really start that process of helping them grow.
It's because I heard a pastor was telling me, and he's got like 300 or 400 people on staff. So it's a large church, but he was saying that like they've had to teach people once again, like what a 40-hour work week is. In other words,
because they were working too much.
Yeah,
you're saying.
They were. Because you think about it, it's easy. Everybody thinks they work hard, but it's not easy to put in 40 hours. In other words, you got to come in on time. You got to you can't hit lunch for an hour and a half, and then you got to stay. And then he was talking about not only did they have to kind of reteach people to think through, what does 40 hours look like, mm-hmm. let alone 50 hours, right? Because if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to put in more than 40 hours. But also he said never had in his time had he led a group of people that worked less but were more tired and were literally more tired, because there's a mental challenge now that I think, it's kind of like success tends to make you soft. And at least here in our country, well, in the West, we've had so much success, like you were saying, all the technology and all the at your fingertips and everything, that in some ways you forget the cost of moving. When I say success, I'm not just talking about making more money, but moving something forward, starting a business or growing a church or impacting a community or helping the poor or feeding the hungry. All those things take lots of people and leaders. And so anyways, I just find that, it seems like we're at a time of transition where it's like everybody's kind of searching for answers as how to lead people, how to you help them to become what they need to be so they succeed, but also whatever it is you're leading actually succeeds.
Yeah.
Your family, your business, your church.
Right.
Well, those kind of things.
One of as far as a very practical thing when it comes to discipling people, something that has stuck with me, and I've been using it a lot lately, like telling people about it, but you told me something when I started, which is leverage what you're into. There's kind of a, and I'm curious what it would be in other businesses, but ministry, there's a typical thing, take someone to coffee.
Right.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but it doesn't have to be coffee. It can be whatever you're passionate about. And it's been interesting. We have, I have a group of guys that I go to the golf range with, and I'm interested in golf, but while we're there, some really great conversations happen where some of those guys are interested in pursuing ministry and talking about family and life. And I think it's leveraging those things that you're into, leveraging those times you're together to just help them understand this is what my life is. It's not something I do, it's who I am. And I think that has been the best discipleship tip for me, is just, what are you into? What are you passionate about? Always bring people with you when you're doing those things. And eventually there's no other choice. Either they will force themselves out, if they're not interested and that's all you talk about, they'll kind of force themselves out, or they'll rise to the occasion and they'll kind of step up to that passion that you exude.
Yeah. You think I was thinking, like, we just got back from Lima, and at Lima, labor is cheap. So, like at the hotel, if they're going to clean the sidewalk, they're not going to do it with one person, a water machine. They might do it with 4 people and brooms or brushes, because labor doesn't, cost a lot. And it's just be interesting to see what the future holds when you think about, are those who are not driven going to get left behind? You know what I mean? Because you're not going to need as many jobs,
Right.
if you're using technology. Or is the inability of the organizations to grow and succeed mean that labor gets cheaper?
Yeah.
And because the economy's not good, right? A business can't pay what they're not making.
Right.
So if they can't find people who want to work hard,
Absolutely.
then, the economy shrinks and people get paid less, and then just going to be interesting to see which way that it goes.
Yeah.
I think, no matter what happens, when what you're saying is there's the relationship component that's important. And then there's also the empowerment, and giving people an opportunity. The old saying, I remember John Maxwell used to say a long time ago, is that, people watch you do it, and, then people help you do it, and then you watch them do it, and then they do it,
Right.
And so, I think there's truth. That's that relational aspect of what, especially when you're in a small group, growing people, growing leaders or specific abilities, that kind of thing. But the things that keep us from discipling people are the things that nobody thinks they struggle with, right? So, empowerment, everybody thinks, oh, I empower people, but a lot of times people who are successful are perfectionists. And so at a certain point, right, if you're going to continue to level up, then you've got to be able to empower other people to really do things. And that sounds easy, but I would encourage all of our listeners just to ask yourself, how are you empowering the people around you? How much line, when you think about rope or whatever, how much do you actually give them?
Yeah.
How much can they screw up?
Right.
Because that really determines how much they're empowered.
Absolutely.
If I know I can screw up, then I'm empowered, right? I can win, I can lose.
Right.
But if I know there's a net under me, right? Where's it at? Is it 15 feet down? Is it 5 feet down? Or am I tied to all those kind of things? I think that first step of helping people succeed is is pushing them out of the nest like the birds do.
Right.
It's empowering people to truly not do stuff. I mean, do stuff. It depends on what you're teaching them, but to make decisions. Because I see a lot of times people empower people. It's like in churches, a lot of times when it comes to diversity, one of the ways people will do that is they'll put diversity up on the stage. And that's good, right? People come in, they see different people, different ages, different ethnic backgrounds. But if you truly want diversity, you have to empower those people. In other words, they're not just on the stage, they're making decisions.
Right.
They have influence. And I think anytime you're raising somebody up, whether it's for diversity or whatever it's for, you have to give people the opportunity to carry the weight and to make the decisions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to go back to something you were mentioning when you were talking about drive with discipleship. There's a lot of people, you probably heard it a lot, like you can't teach drive. But I've been thinking lately, I wonder if that statement is true from the viewpoint that we both kind of just shared the sentiment that it seems like drive is different today than what it may have previously been. And that concerns me for the future. Like, okay, if you can't teach drive, then is this just going to be a generation that lacks drive? Is that just what we're going to see play out in kind of my generation? And, it can be really challenging to work through these scenarios. Recently the Amazon guy who said that, we're going to go back to in-office working. And, he, from the quote that he said was very understandable. Hey, if this isn't for you, I understand that. That's fine. We want to help you find, another company that fits what you desire better. And a lot of people were frustrated in what he had said. And, you think about these people who are in a position where it feels like I should be able to work from home, but have this successful business. And I think that there's an aspect that you can either shut your mind off to those people, like, well, there's nothing I can teach them. They don't have drive. You can't teach drive. That's it. Or you can try and disciple those people into an understanding of what's actually required. Now, that doesn't always work, of course, but I think it's interesting when you see a lot of this stuff. I think the tendency is to just, well, those people can't be discipled. And you kind of just shut yourself off to those people. And it's like, okay, where are the people who already get it? You know what I mean? But the truth is, I think we're seeing more and more that is what we're going to have to disciple in people, is the understanding of what it means to work, what it means, to get very practical, like what it means to work physically. You know what I mean? Like you said, what is a 40-hour work week? What does that actually look like? What does that feel like? But I know that for the previous generation, that could be frustrating. And so when it comes to discipleship, how do you make sure that you're not getting narrow-minded to where it's like, okay, only this type of person I can disciple? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, part of it is that you have to come to the realization that society and culture changes. So it's like, how do I lead where the culture is today? And there's no doubt the whole, people aren't as mentally tough as they once were.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? For good or for bad. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't know, but, used to be, it's just like, okay, we see it in the NBA, right? They take games off, or used to, you play 82 games unless you got hurt, and then you did your best to get out there.
Right.
Now that's not the way it is. Right. And we see it in all the sports. And again, I'm not saying that's negative. I'm just saying you have to figure out, and I don't know that anybody's per se, figured out the perfect system. I think everybody's trying. Is like, so how do you lead the culture that we now find ourselves in, at least in the West or here in the United States, as far as, you just think if you're a coach and you're trying to lead players, well, they got to play to win.
Right.
But they got a brand they're trying to protect, and maybe they care more about that than they do actually whether or not the team wins. If the team wins, it impacts their brand in a positive way. So how do you motivate them to go out there and play with a stub toe?
Yeah.
If they're, afraid that if they do, it could cost them in the, I don't know that, everybody's figured that out, because up to this point, the teams that have done well, like if we just take leading from the NBA, have been teams that have somebody on their team that's make sure everybody else pays the price. Michael Jordan, made sure everybody, paid the price. He played all the games. LeBron, has done that to, he's played for 20 years, right?
Right.
And so I think everybody's trying to figure out exactly how do you succeed, at that level. I was reading an article that talked about one of the reasons that America has had such success when it comes to inventions and just world success is that, and again, don't get mad at me, that's what this author was saying, is just Americans work harder.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So if that's true, right, if success is tied to hard work, which you tend to think that it is,
sure, then
you think, do you have to settle for less? You know what I mean? Like if it takes this much effort to get here, and you're just not going to get that kind of effort today, then do you have to can you figure out how to lead people to get there, or is there a new normal?
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying there is, right? I mean, somebody's going to figure this out in the NBA, and they're going to play their guys, their superstars, 60 games out of the 82, but still win 75 games or 72 games or, 68 games. That'll be interesting. Can you do that without somebody driving the team?
Yeah.
Setting the example to play, 72 games instead of 65 or whatever it is, So I think we're at a learning, but I still think the key is to empower people. I think, to go off what you're saying, just if you're listening today, relationship is important, right? You hear where people are coming from, be able to explain where you're coming from, and then to be able to empower them so that they feel the responsibility and the weight.
Yeah.
And I think without relationship, the hard part about empowering people is then they sink quicker. Like I said, they're not as mental. And again, I'm speaking in generalities here, but I'm just sharing some of the challenges for me is that they sink quicker. You used to be able to throw 100 pounds to somebody, they pick it up and they throw it in the truck or whatever, right?
Right.
Today, you throw somebody 100 pounds and they think you're being mean to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you need to hire somebody else. I'll carry 50 and they can carry 50, but you got the same $25.
Right.
It's like they still want their full $25.
Right.
But they want you to hire somebody else and somewhere find another $25 so they can each carry 50. And it's like, well, if you want to hire somebody else, you can have 12 and they can have 12.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, I can't. I don't want to, I can't carry that weight. So I haven't figured that out. Some of you guys listening today, in the chat, you might have some great insight. I've been reading on it. I've heard a lot of complaining. I've heard YouTubers complain about how they struggle to find people that are willing to put in the effort. And if the ones who are willing to put in the effort, then they have their own channels,
Right.
I've heard that from coaches in the NBA. I've heard that from pastors, so I've heard it in almost every area, but I haven't heard a lot of folks who have figured it out.
Well, it's definitely tough. I mean, I think most people are motivated financially.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I have drive because I want something better for my family. I'm not saying it's all selfish financial desire, but I want something better. And so previously, if you weren't willing to put in the work, there was a far less substantial life that you would live. You know what I mean? Whereas now, even if you're not willing to put in that work because of technology, you can still have Netflix, you still have internet, you can still have these things that kind of give you these luxuries that make it hard for someone to understand, well, so what's the point in that next level? Like, I've got these different things.
Right.
So what's the point in that next level? You know what I mean? That kind of personal, especially if they've never experienced it. You know, you think of how many kids are growing up right now where their parents work from home. Like, they don't know what it is to have a parent who wasn't at the house.
Wouldn't they look to the government as well? I mean, you know, it's like paying off the student loans. In my generation, everybody might complain about student loans and how much they cost, but they would have never thought of having somebody else to pay off what they have borrowed. Where today there's that expectation. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying we got to figure out now, how do you lead somebody who has the expectation that they've borrowed whatever, $50,000, and somehow it's the rest of society's responsibility to pay that off.
Exactly.
And that's okay. So then when you ask that same person to make a financial sacrifice to build a company or to build a church or to build, you know, the first, you know, how do you then lead that person, I think, is where we're all trying to figure that out. I mean, this has been a podcast full of questions, not necessarily a lot of answers, but I do think the answers that we have given, which is, it's, you know, it starts with relationship. It moves to a sense of empowerment. You know, not Ken Blanchard talked about seagull leadership, where you know, seagulls fly in, make a bunch of noise, you know, crap all over everybody and then leave. You know, that's not empowerment. You know what I mean? You got to walk with the person, answer their questions and inspire them and encourage them, you know, all those different things. But I think empowerment often doesn't. Empowerment is one of those things that, I think is just often, people think they're giving it when they're really not giving it. You know, in other words, they're giving people jobs, they're giving people a task, and they're calling that empowerment. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I need you to do the podcast, right? But true empowerment is, how do you want the setup? You know, you having the input on the setup and what we're going to talk about, and you know, in other words, it's true influence and impact, and that takes risk. You know,
right? Absolutely. Well, and the benefit is, you know, as difficult as it can be to disciple people in today's world, there's immense benefits as well. You know, there's an aspect that people can go further just because of how much information is out there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think about the fact that, like, I know how to edit videos, and I've never spent a dime learning how to edit videos. Right. That information is all free on the internet. You know what I mean? Whereas you've talked about how if you wanted to learn something, there had to be a cost to it. Now, there's a good part of that for sure, but there's the benefit in how much people can learn for free now, that if you're able to disciple someone and help them learn that really sacrifice of what it costs to be successful, man, there's no limit to what they can do, what they could have access to, and what they could really accomplish.
And things are changing. I mean, you know, it used to be, there was a few record, you know, producers, and you know, if you wanted a record, or if you wanted an album, or if you wanted a book or whatever, now everybody can do it. You know, everybody can do video editing. Everybody can make a album in their home, you know, with the right equipment. Everybody can make a movie, you know, if they get the gifts and the talents. So it's a different world, you know, and I'm sure the same thing is true with ministry. You know, there's a lot of different places you can go to hear the gospel or to grow and mature. And
absolutely,
I think everybody's trying to figure that out.
Well, you know, this may be a question for another podcast, but it'd almost be interesting I wonder if that has anything to do with lack of drive, just from the viewpoint that, you know, you're not competing in this small field anymore. Like you said, everyone can edit a video. And so it's no longer like, oh, I've got this skill that other people don't have, which can almost, you know, demotivate you.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think, like I said, this is one of those podcasts that hopefully, we've given you something to think about. I think we do a lot of complaining as opposed to trying to figure out how do we more effectively lead.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a complainer or a whiner or talk about the way things used to be. Things are the way they are. And whether that's good or bad or whatever, it's reality. And it's like, so how do we lead effectively our families? If you've got kids, young kids, or if it's a business or if it's ministry. But anyways, leave a comment. What are some of the things that you're doing that is effectively raising up leaders and empowering leaders? In other words, you're not just getting folks to do a task, but you're actually empowering people to lead different departments or aspects of your business or ministry, or and how are you inspiring them? How are you motivating them? We'll do another podcast maybe where we talk a little bit more about some of the things we've learned and some of the things we are doing along the way. But I think it's important sometimes just for all of us to take a moment and reflect and think about how do we more effectively lead in the day and the time in which we live, as opposed to trying to force culture to go back to a time maybe where you were more comfortable. Leave us a comment. Let us know. Don't forget, the book's out. The audio version is as well. We also we'll do a live stream. It's on Sunday nights. We have a lot of fun, play some games, talk about things that are going on in the culture. Actually, this last week or the week before, I can't remember, we did one on the election. It might be a good one to fire you up. I don't know whether you agree or disagree with what we talked about, but you're more than welcome to check that out. And then some leadership talks. And if you want to hear the teaching on the weekend, just go to Potential Church and check it out. Hey guys, we will see you next Thursday. I hope you have an amazing day, and God bless. See you next time.